planet, where we discuss the important but often ignored subject of counterfeits. Once again, I have a special guest. We are out here in Lubogo Hotel, where a land friend of mine has been kind enough to invite me here to interview him, and we have taken a break. We have been following up all the episodes we've had. I've been covering the events in the valley, where we had a successful song audition for the Fix Desk launch as well, where we have used music to present and promote the message of counterfeits in agriculture. But we resume our normal programming. I have a special guest, Mr. Dr. to be, maybe I should call you a doctor.
Doctoris.
Doctoris. Okay. The good thing, he's not thinking about it. He's doing his doctorate, but he's not calling himself a doctor.
No.
Some people are not even doctors, and already they are saying they are doctors.
So,
And because this show is against counterfeits, we appreciate the fact that Mr. Isaac Christopher Lubogo
right.
is here with us. Mr. Christopher Lubogo, welcome. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Again, when I use the word senior, I hope I'm also not doing counterfeit. Because I know senior is also something that is given by the faculty of the Chief Justice and following certain procedural guidelines. But I'm exceedingly humbled and wanted to have this interaction with you, particularly in respect with counterfeit. And I know where you're coming from in terms of counterfeit. When you talk about Africa, then, man, there's everything about counterfeit to talk about. So, about myself, my name is Isaac Christopher Lubogo. I am also from Muwema, which is called half London. I hold a Bachelor's of Law, Master's of Law, and I'm doing a PhD in psychology, philosophy, and also doing a doctorate of law. At the same time, doing a PhD in law, so I'm doing three at the same time. I think it was in 1871 where Ralph Waldo Emerson said that if a man can build a better house or make a better mousetrap than his neighbor, even if they build a house in the woods, the world will make a beaten path to his door. That will become increasingly true. So I know that one of the reasons why you came is for us to have a discourse in terms of intellectual discourse that has to do with issues that have to do with counterfeit. And for all intents and purposes, I think that is a subject that no one can take for granted. So I must thank you, thank you, Council, for studying this, and I'm delighted informed that you've been doing this for the last 15 years or so. I think it's groundbreaking, and we should applaud you and encourage you to do better things than this.
Okay, thank you, Isaac. I will call you Isaac for the purpose of
No
the show.
problem.
Before we go further, Isaac, we have an international symposium on intellectual property and protection and enforcement of intellectual property in Nairobi. We are working with the Anti-Counterfeit Authority of Kenya. In Kenya, they have a government agency. In Uganda, we don't have. We have the SCN. But this symposium is bringing all the who is who in the protection of intellectual property down to Nairobi. I am hoping that I can send an invitation here now to you, if you can come and participate and see what we as Africa are proposing to do in countering this menace. So I think that's enough for the introduction. But you are an academic. You told me you are an executive principal of the Institute.
Yes.
You are a lecturer. You are doing 3 doctorates at the same time. There is a saying, they don't go to the saying, but it's said that if you want to hide something from an African, put it in red. You have written over 40 books. They are spread out here. What are you hiding from fellow Africans?
That's an
And
interesting.
first of all, is it true that we don't read?
Well, it's a question of debate in terms of what used to be the trend as opposed to what is the trend now. If you permit me, I'll tell you a story of Willie Lynch. In America, there used to be our brothers and sisters once upon a time were gotten hold of and sold into slavery, if you remember that time. And they were taken and given up to different islands. And some slaves were becoming a problem in a particular area because they were revolting every now and then. But there was this guy called Willie Lynch. The word lynch came from his second name. So when you see the word lynch in the dictionary, you think that that means, diabolical or bad method of approach or treating individuals. But this came from the individual, how he used to take hold of the slaves. So one day they brought him to America because the slaves in America were so rebellious, and he asked them the question, how were you able to keep these guys in order? I told them, get a nigger, like they used to say. They used to call us black niggers, or they call us even now black niggers. Put him in front of the young niggers, black children, female, tear his skin off, do it in front of the black niggers, tie one hand, one leg, on a horse, facing opposite direction. Do the same, one hand, one leg, on another horse, facing the opposite direction. Beat this nigger so bad, beat the horses so that they can tear this guy into pieces. Set fire under his private parts. Set dogs onto the women so that they can bite off their private parts and their breasts. Do it in front of the black niggers. And then put the fear of God in them. Take the mind, keep the body, so that it can be useful for future generations. So everything that you see here comes from what a great man one time said, most men see things as they are and ask why. The great Benachon. I look at things that are not and ask why not. So when I look
you
at
express it
absolutely
in writing.
I do express that in writing. So many of the things that you're gonna see here are groundbreaking books. These are things that are not there. And yet there is a reason why we need to resonate that way. That's why I told you that every strive I do in my life is to make sure that I put back what they call your righteous mind. I cause you to think so that you go against, I think it was Marvin Garvin who said that the world has made black people a vice. I intend to make it a virtue. So the world has made black people not to believe in ideology of intellectualism or the idea of thinking outside the box. My idea is to make you think and think outside the box and throw the box away.
Think to make yourself better. So, for those who don't know, what do you write about?
I write basically everything that itches my heart in terms of nobility. Most of the books that we write about don't come because so and so has written about it. If you look at all the books here, no one has written about those particular books. If I find someone who has written about something, the assumption is that perhaps there's something good enough. So we go into what they call uncharted waters. We write things that have never been seen and heard of for purposes of creating an avenue. Because listen, my brother, Council, Muwema, time is gone where people are going to rely on doctrines of dogma, as it was socially big forever. This is the time to charter new waves. The world is moving at a very supersonic speed. And the only way you can be left behind if you begin gazing in old dreams of melancholism that were propounded by ideologies that have been taken over by event. Perhaps that is something that you're going to ask about that has to do with National Council of Higher Education in terms of the curriculum that we have today. Most of the things, Mr. Muwema, you're aware, in constitutional law, that most of our laws are incepted by virtue of the Ordering Council in reception codes. All the things, we're arguing about things that were simply grafted on us, things that did not come within us and resonate out of us so that they can be able. So if you're talking about African Renaissance or African Recollection or African Renaissance, you have met the gentleman who proposed that ideology.
An African Renaissance, when we Africans are drowning in counterfeits, how possible is that?
That's a good question. If you're talking about counterfeit, perhaps I think the only country that has a disclaimer as far as counterfeit is concerned is China. Because everything that China does is almost a counterfeit of something else. So when I talk about counterfeit, I agree with you. The ideology that things should be done in terms of the ability. But listen, Mr. Muwema, we're going to miss the point and ask me how. Right now, we're talking about ChatGPT and the technology of what ChatGPT is doing in terms of what it is able to blend. Right now, I can go to ChatGPT and command it to write a poem, right? And to generate a poem and I'll call it my poem. You could do the same to give it something different. Are you going to say that's a counterfeit? So counterfeit must be understood in terms of the transitions of what is happening today. If it's a question of replicating someone's ideology or passing over information by way of reducing on its performance or in terms of its quality, and therefore affecting the lives of people, I agree with you 101%. But then perhaps the bigger question is, what regulatory framework do we have today that is substantive enough to capture counterfeit? I don't believe in counterfeits because I know what they do. They reduce the standards, they give effects, and then they end up, reducing on the quality and the performance of. When we were young, if you remember, I know you're much probably older than I am, but I remember there are certain products that we used to depend on, made in England. When we were young in school, they used to call certain individuals who were extremely hardworking, chuma cha mudachi, because they knew that those were people who, whose products were dependable. Right now, if you want anything fake, they probably call you China, because that's the way to go. But again, the problem is, when you argue counterfeit, is it our own liking, or is it because of our socio-economic standing, vis-a-vis the fact that we're not having the prudent regulatory system that can be able to capture and curtail all these.
But before you go to the regulatory system, me and you, with the elites, the African elites, do you think we are doing enough to help, because we are the eyes of society, do you think we are doing enough to help those who rely on us to see? By counterfeits, I'll give you an example. I am sure you have heard that there has been not once, not twice, reported in international media that baby powder, a lot of it that we use here, there have been lawsuits in the US which have found that it has got certain substances that have active carcinogens that cause cancer. But we, the elites and the rest of the Africans, continue to use these baby powder products, and yet we can see and do nothing about it. Are we, the elites, responsible in a way, in your view, to the escalation of the counterfeit problem on the African market?
Edmund Burke said that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. I am proud that you're a good man and you intend to do something about it. Counterfeit, beginning from money, health products, food products, intellectual products in terms of copyrights and intellectual property, name it. All of them, as I said, have an effect, substantial effect on the quality of the individual life. Right now, Uganda, for example, tried to do some clothing, if you remember, you came over Goa. And we met a lot of opposition from some of those countries abroad, because their argument was that your product was not good enough to meet the standards in terms of, the products that we're going to send outside. And yet we, day and night, rely on them in terms of the products that they give us. So I would understand the question you're asking it as an African and as a person who comes from probably the same area in terms of where you thrive, of the dangers that we have as a nation in terms of our health concerns, like you rightly pointed out, the powder, the medicines themselves. How many times do we see medicines that are fabricated on the streets of Kampala, and branded with the very names that would replicate, those so-called good companies abroad, So even before we begin talking about the so many fake things and, that don't meet the standard, it's again a question of, socio-economic, but also perhaps ethical standards in terms of the individual. Because unfortunately for most of us, it's a question of survival for the fittest. We tend to live for the day rather than trying to live for tomorrow. Most of these people abroad create foundations that are going to be, propounded by or relied on by future generations in terms of young children. But for us, it's a question of, if it serves my purpose today, to hell with
So
tomorrow.
are you saying that, from where you are you saying that educated or non-educated, the African is suffering severely against the menace of counterfeits? We, even with the elites, don't appreciate this problem. As we're speaking here, the elites are leaving the office, they are in the supermarkets, they are busy buying product A or product B, They cannot check the trademark. They cannot check the expiry date. We are just lying. We are being gullible. Is that a reasonable assessment of us?
Absolutely, I wouldn't agree with you any less than that. But again, I would understand why we come from that kind of reasoning and why, as a nation, listen, Senior Counsel, you're talking about a country whose GDP is about $851 annually. Replicate that in terms of month. That's about $270,000 a month. Now you and I, in spite of the fact that we are lawyers and we're talking about public servants, that's virtually what they're supposed to be getting. Leave alone the so-called minimum wage, which is $130,000 per month. Compare that in terms of survival. How would you expect for an ordinary Ugandan to go and look out for the genetic thing? Because this guy who's selling the so-called genetic thing has put a lot of inventive step, a lot of substantive information, whatever packaging for purposes of making it, equitable, for lack of a better word. So we find ourselves prey, not deliberately because we wouldn't want better things in terms of better quality, but even because of our socio-economic standards.
But how do you explain the fact that we did have as many counterfeits on the market in the 70s and 80s and 90s when we were supposed to be, we were still poor, but we're not consuming counterfeits as much.
Yes.
Why do we consume them now, yet the economy has expanded? We're doing an economy now almost hitting 30-40 billion dollars. Is poverty, is the lack of money a reason for you to buy a dangerous product to kill you? Are we saying that we are justified because of poverty?
Poverty, but also ignorance. You see, an African would rather eat something and die today.
Or tomorrow, and survive today.
Absolutely. So that's the problem. So people don't mind so much about the issue of tomorrow. The question is, do I have what I have to make me go through today? And that is the problem. So even though I know deep within everyone's, if you go down the streets of Kampala, ask any ordinary person, say this is the fake, this is the real, what do you do? They'll tell you, I definitely want the good one. But because my social economic cannot support the so-called good one, I am obliged to do the fake. And then we have countries like China, which are saying, wait, we can do the things for you, to meet your standard. In China today, if you go to buy, but actually they launched Apple. They launched an Apple iPhone in America today. The next day,
They have a version of this.
the very version of it in China and being sold in Dubai. Think about that instantly. So we're competing with the people who are ready to go because they know where their money is. So,
Isaac, we need to take a break.
right.
Let's take a break and come back